The London Palladium has their wall of fame by stage doors. So they've got people like Bing Crosby. They've got Ken Dodd. We've got a little singer named Frank Sinatra, Tom Jones, Cilla Black, Cliff Richard. A little low-key performer named Liberace. Basically always turned up on stage in his car. Mary said, my Hago anniversary is coming up. How does it feel? Thank you for reminding me. So, 22nd of December last year, I did my first tour for Hago, which was a tour of the South Bank, Shakespeare's Globe area. Now, stupidly, I had about 57% battery. And the battery ran out just before the end. And the battery on the gimbal, which I hadn't fully charged, went out as well. The whole thing went vertical. The whole screen went dark. And I think I said at the end of the tour, it's all going dark. And then the tour cut out. And I think people had thought, oh, he's jumped in the river. He's gone. That's it. He's done one tour. And he's had enough. He's just gone for it. But I learned from that. I learned that having your location on, having your internet, mobile network on, and videoing at the same time, you need 100% battery. You live and learn, right? I've learned so much in 1 year. So 1 year anniversary, 1 year Hago anniversary, that'll be 22nd, and I'll be reading The Signalman by Charles Dickens. That'll be live from home with a video of a deserted train station at night. So that will be very atmospheric. And also, it's just been 200 tours. So I've just had my 200th tour. And that was, I think, the second of the Christmas carols that I read recently. Oh, thank you, Tish. Thank you so much. So when I said a few moments ago that people are facing me as I was walking up the street, now I'm walking down. I would call it down Carnaby Street. It feels like there's a slight angle down. And everything is facing us now. Is this just fantasy? Look up to the skies. We're talking Bohemian Rhapsody. There's something to be said for snowflakes and lights in general. But when you see robins, not just Robin here on the tour, and you see snowmen, and you see glittery crowns and glittery Union flags, it's quite nice, and it does give you a sense of pride that Carnaby Street seems to get it right every year. By the way, the London Palladium, which we just passed, which opened in 1910, is considered the home of Christmas pantomime. Had many famous performers, but for many years, people like Des O'Connor and Cliff Richard, they all performed pantomime there, and it seems to have gone back to the home of pantomime. It's had a lot of musicals in recent years, but when the first lockdown happened in March of 2020, the first shows they had back were pantomimes. They wanted to recoup something that they had lost. And pantomimes traditionally normally don't have the 8 shows a week that a regular play or musical have. The regional pantomimes normally have 10 to 12 shows a week, and that's what they were running at the Palladium. So they ended up making a bit more money, recouped some of the losses from the COVID lockdowns. The idea of pantomime, to have a principal boy, which is normally a girl dressed as a male character, so Dick Whittington or Aladdin would normally be a girl as a male part, And then you had the pantomime dame, which was normally a middle-aged man dressed as a woman. And they were a kind of cameo part. And it caused maybe a bit of uproar at the time, but that was Victorian times. When it all started, there was a lot of hypocrisy in the theatre world, a lot of censorship, and the idea of men playing women and women playing men, until somebody pointed out that Shakespeare was doing exactly the same. In Shakespeare's play As You Like It, there's a female character, Rosalind or Rosalind, who goes in disguise as a man in the story. Later on, he disguises himself as a woman, and then somebody says to her, why don't you disguise yourself as a man? So it would have been a boy originally playing a woman, playing a man, playing a woman. Patrick Stewart did that, indeed. Look at that. Sam has said, they say if a robin came into your garden or up to your window, it's a relative from heaven coming to say hello. I love that. I have a community garden, an allotment, so a garden that I drive quite close to where my mum lives, about 10, 12 miles from me. When I have my shovel and my spade out, about to do a bit of digging, and a robin lands on it, I often think of my father, and I think, because it was his allotment. And I inherited it and try and keep it going to kind of keep him in memory, which is, it's impossible to keep him out of the family's memory, really. They say it's a cardinal in your garden, as in a cardinal like a bishop. So if you see a cardinal, I think I know what you mean. Yeah, I'm joking. Imagine like an actual cardinal, Cardinal Wolsey or a bishop turned up in your garden. You think that's good luck. But secondly, what are you doing here? Widow Twankey. Yeah, there's a slight issue with some of the shows, isn't there? That they're not historically accurate. Widow Twankey in Aladdin. I like the idea that back in Shakespeare's time, you had obviously celebrations of Christmas, but we had a period where Henry VIII decided to go way against the Catholic tradition. So there were 115 saints' days, feast days, which he did away with. And then they decided to have the Christmas celebrations properly from the 24th. So it was unlucky to put your decorations up before the 24th of December, and it was unlucky to take them down before 12th night, the night of the 5th of January. And Shakespeare wrote plays that their first performances at court were on 12th night. So we know The Winter's Tale, it's got to do with winter. They mention winter. There's not much to do with winter in the story. That was first performed in a private court theatre for aristocracy on 12th night. And he also wrote a play called 12th Night. But the play has literally nothing to do with 12th night. So a lot of the Christmas celebrations in Shakespeare's time were just the same as ever, but they were bawdy, funny, normally comedies, sometimes romances, but every now and then you had a tragedy. So we know that Macbeth was performed on a 12th night during James I's reign, and Macbeth is one of the saddest plays, one of the most tragic, but it was given a Christmas celebration performance. And then pantomime, when that took over in the 1800s and early 1900s, you often find that those stories have nothing to do with Christmas either. One of the most famous is Cinderella, and then you've got Dick Whittington, and Dick Whittington was a real Lord Mayor of London. He designed a toilet in London called Whittington's Longhouse. He commissioned it, 128 seats long. And it stood near Vauxhall, not too far from Battersea Power Station and not too far as well from the US Embassy. But it was called Whittington's Longhouse, 128 seats, running water. They gave you goose feathers. Imagine that at the time. Must have felt like all your Christmases had come at once. There was this nice way of going to the restroom. Goose feathers for what? Tish, don't you ask me things like that. I think you know well what they were for. Yeah, and the English love a good murder at Christmas. They do. They do love ghost stories. And I'll be reading The Signal Man. I know that Nick's doing a ghost story for Christmas. If anyone has not watched the TV show, the BBC TV show Inside Number 9, they always do great Christmas ghost stories on the BBC if you can get that. The idea of turkey. Turkey is the thing that we now eat at Christmas. Turkey is more a Thanksgiving thing, of course, in the US. That was probably all to do as well with Puritans and Catholics, and the idea of saying, well, the Catholics were eating turkey. We need to kind of take that away from the Christmas celebrations. So it became something in the US that was more associated with Thanksgiving rather than Christmas. So we have a mix of different traditions here. The Christmas trees, the Romans were doing that. They were bringing in greenery in the winter into their homes. They were bringing in yew and laurel and ivy, different trees. I made a joke the other day, and I was quite proud of it, that doing all of that would spruce up your house. So I don't know if they brought in spruce. I was quite happy with that. I noticed there hasn't been any laughter on the chat, but that's fine. Thank you. Yeah, isn't this lovely? Brenda said, probably right, the Pilgrims didn't eat turkey, although that's what I was told in school. It may well have been that. The big food during Henry VIII's time was roast beef. The turkey was introduced to England, I believe, in around 1520, so it was eaten, but roast beef was the traditional food at Christmas. This is so lovely, isn't it? We're on Regent Street. Most of the buildings, the Royal Pavilion in Brighton, quite a lot of the area around Regent's Park near Baker Street. Most of the buildings now are in that design, but they're not John Nash buildings. But Regent Street always have these angels. And what we're going to do is walk up just around the corner towards Piccadilly, but if you were with me at the start of the tour, you may have seen that there was an enormous crowd of people celebrating a victory in the World Cup. If you haven't watched the match, I shouldn't really say, but it was a phenomenal game of football or soccer. And then, of course, in Dickensian times, people are talking about pheasants here, they were eating goose. Goose was the most popular food. And then I suppose we went the way of our lovely friends in the US, and the turkey took over for Christmas for us. Some people, the idea 400 or flesh at Christmas. A lot of people were vegetarian and vegan not by choice, not through the thoughts and the kindness of themselves, but because they wanted to eat meat, but they couldn't afford it. So we had beef, then we had goose, now we have turkey, and now we have aluminum and aluminium Christmas trees indoors. And I read a long article the other day about what is the most ecologically sound thing to do: to have a fake tree and keep it for 20 years, or to have a real tree and cut it down. And the article ended up saying, if you've got a tree for 25 years, then environmentally, it's worth having a fake tree. But if you get a new fake tree every couple of years, not worth it at all. Wow. Okay, we should be back. So just refresh again, anyone that can hear this. It's dipping in and out. Yeah, we were going to stop further up, but I thought, well, stay with me for a second. We'll just come to the end of Regent Street. Even if the signal goes, I'm not saying anything of too much importance here towards the end. The idea of the 12 days of Christmas. To think that now, I think Easter Sunday ends, and a couple of days later, people start planning for Christmas. Some people. I know there's one shop, there's probably a few, but one in the US, in a small town. It's called a Christmas store, and it stays open all year round. Some people love the vibrancy of Christmas, and the lights and the loudness, and the dancing and the feasting. And a lot of people are fans of the, in a strange way, I think I am as well, the melancholy of Christmas. That it can be peaceful as well. But the melancholy to remember those long gone, people that we miss, and maybe people less fortunate than ourselves. I'd like to thank you all for joining me tonight. Let's have a look at more at the chat. Becky said, thank you for another pretty light. I love your stories and general banter. Oh, that's lovely. You're so welcome. Janice has asked about the 12 days of Christmas. The 12 days of Christmas start on the 24th and they end on the night of the 5th of January. It's supposed to be the journey of the three wise men, the three magi, the three kings, who know that this child will be born, the Christ child, and they go on this pilgrimage to visit him. And the night of the 5th is the night they have finished their journey and they've met this child. And then the 6th, you have the Epiphany, which is the announcement to the world that the child has been born. So the way the 12 days of Christmas work, it works from the 24th to the 6th. But modern Christmas celebrations, they seem to start a little bit earlier every year. Okay, so we're approaching Piccadilly. Yeah, the wise men bringing gifts, gold, frankincense and myrrh. And then somebody made a joke to me once that gold and frankincense were the two real gifts. And the third gift, the third wise man, didn't know what to give. And they said, what are you going to give as a gift? And he said, myrrh. And they said, okay, myrrh, that's what it's going to be. Yeah, so it's not a bad one. Thanks, sorry though. It's quietened down a bit. Probably about 1,000 people here earlier. They're Argentinian flags. I'm not saying that Argentina won the World Cup. I don't want to be a spoiler, but... And the hooting is to do with that as well. Spreading the mirth with that one. Yeah, you'd think maybe would prefer rattles. I made a good joke the other day as well that I think some people appreciated that I had a bit of cramp in my foot before I started doing one of the readings, the Christmas Carol readings. And I said, oh, it might be Krampus, which I thought was quite funny. Krampus. Okay, I'm going to send you back to me now. Here I am, just so you can see that I'm here. This is not my real hair, this is a hat. It was cold, it was wet, gave it a go. Here I am. Yeah, it's Yule. Galadriel is more pagan. Well, the name Galadriel, I like that. So the idea of a Yule log. So when they cut down the tree, they cut an enormous log and they burnt it for the entire 12 days of Christmas. And so it must have been an enormous log. But it was more in medieval times because they used to have great halls. If you watch things like Game of Thrones or Lord of the Rings, they have these enormous halls. The thing is, in Tudor times, they started to live more in chambers. The last great hall was, by the way, this guy's trying to do some business here. I'm going to walk back. I've heard this song about 600 times already in the last 2 days. So a Yule log now is quite a small thing, and obviously it's chocolate as well, whereas in the UK we normally have the more spiced things like Christmas pudding and mince pies. But they stopped burning the Yule log for the 12 days of Christmas in England when the great halls stopped being built. In Tudor times, the rooms became smaller, and it would simply be too smoky and too smelly and too dangerous. But originally it was burning a massive log for 12 days.